The number of people who die every year in Australia will almost double over the next 25 years. That's just a stat. I'm not making a very slow-moving threat. But where do people want to die?
70% of people would like to die at home, but in fact only about 14% do.
Where we don't want to die is in a hospital or an aged care residential facility, especially if we're just there to visit family. The thing is that more than half of us will end up dying in hospital and a third of us will die in aged care. And for the most part, we don't know how to die well. A US study found early palliative care made an incredible difference to patients.
The group with palliative care reported less pain, less depression. They needed fewer hospitalizations. And ladies and gentlemen, they lived 3 to 6 months longer.
So how do we bridge the gap between the death that we want and the death that we get? You get a death talker. My guest tonight is a palliative care nurse and educator. Please welcome Molly Carlisle. Hello. So you're not just a death talker, you're the death talker.
I am.
When was that title bestowed upon you?
It took a whole lot of thought and a whole lot of discussion with a whole lot of people, because trying to say you're a nurse and a counsellor and an educator and a blah, 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 you've lost people in the first 2 seconds. So I had a friend who said to me, Mol, what is it you actually do? And I said, well, I talk about death. And that was it.
So as we've already heard, an overwhelming majority of people would like to die at home, but an overwhelming majority of people don't get to. How do people get death so wrong?
Because they haven't had the conversation. So particularly if you think about it in terms of most people die in this country of chronic disease. They don't die of trauma. So when you've got a chronic disease like cancer or heart disease, respiratory disease, all of that stuff, dementia, and you may be not living at your home, but in a home, unless you've made it very plain to the people who are caring for you about what your death wishes are, and something happens, you have a stroke or something, the first thing they do is ring an ambulance and you end up in the emergency department. So unless people have that discussion with the carers and have something written down, that's the likely outcome. And that's where we're falling down.
Because there's even some research that says that people with terminal illnesses that choose to die at home often live longer than those who choose to stay in hospital having surgery, pursuing cures and pursuing possibly the chance of life. Often they live longer and die happier at home.
Once you're in hospital, you're at the mercy of the system. And unless you've got an enlightened care team looking after you, the pattern that tends to happen is that everything is tried. So if you haven't had that conversation with your family, you haven't told your doctors you don't want futile treatment, often that's what you get, because the doctors are there to fix you. That's their gig. That's what they sign up for. And death is often seen by medical people as a failure. And so there's a whole lot of work we've got to do around how we educate health professionals that death isn't a failure, it's the inevitable end of a human existence, and it has to happen at some point or other. And people need to have choice about how and when that happens for them.
So have you been able to apply that to your own life personally?
Sure. My kids can tell you exactly what I want and what I think a good death is. They know exactly what I want for my funeral, including that I want a big bowl of twisties on top of my coffin, not flowers, so that when people are at the grave and, you know, they throw stuff in, they'll throw in a handful of twisties and then they'll be doing this for the rest of the day. So I'll have left a mark, you know?
I'm already laughing about your death. Was that something that ran in your family? Like, were your parents good at talking about death to you?
Not really. I think it happened for me because I became a nurse when I was relatively young. I looked after my first dying patient when I was 19. She was a 34-year-old woman with liver cancer, and her biggest fear was that her kids wouldn't remember her after she died. And look, we're really good, Charlie, at pain and symptom management. We're really good at doing all of that medical stuff. But the thing for most people is they need to be able to tell their story. And for that lady, her telling her story to me has kept her alive for the intervening 30 years, because I talk about her all the time.
So let's say we get the conversation right and the person that dies gets the kind of death that they would like.
Yeah.
What can we do for the people left behind that have to live on? How can we be better at handling that part of death?
Well, that's where I'm going to say something really controversial now. Coming from the health sector, coming from palliative care, I reckon we've got to let go of the ownership of death. Palliative care and health have owned death for a long time, and we need to throw open the doors now and say to the community, hey, you guys all have a role in this. You all have a responsibility to talk to the people that you love about death, to educate your kids about death, like you do about sex and drugs and alcohol and all that other stuff. And I've got to tell you, Charlie, I would rather talk to a teenager about death than about sex any day. You know, it's a whole lot easier. So
I've been told I'm not allowed to do either. But different cultures handle death in completely different ways. And
Yeah,
it
sure.
feels that generally in Australian society we don't have a structured approach to it unless you've got, say, an ethnic background that specifies something.
I think with the secularisation of Australian society, we've thrown out some bad stuff, but we've also lost a lot of the good stuff, a lot of the ritual that used to surround death, that used to identify to a community grieving families. You know, people would wear black, like some cultures still do.
Well, I'm fortunate enough to be very close to Greek culture and to Jewish culture, and both have a set game plan.
Yes.
When someone dies, you know what to do, and it feels like it makes it easier for everyone.
Absolutely. Because the one thing, you know, when I was doing a lot of work with grieving families, the thing that they would say was it frustrated the hell out of them when they would go down the street, having just had someone really close to them die and feeling like their guts has been torn out, while they stand in line at the chemist and someone's arguing over the price of a lipstick or something, and they just want to yell out, listen here, you know, my husband just died, I don't give a shit about your lipstick. That's how they feel, because there's nothing that identifies them as needing care and holding by their community. So we need to reinvent some rituals that actually get the community to pull in and support people when they're grieving.
But that used to happen. Like wearing of an armband used to be very common in,
It did.
particularly in European cultures.
Absolutely.
And even here, people would wear a black armband when someone died.
And people used to stop at the side of the road. This is going to make me sound ancient, but when a hearse went past, people used to stop at the side of the road and stand while the hearse drove past. And men used to take their hats off. But like all of that's gone. So we need to rediscover rituals that are meaningful for us, whether it means we set up a crystal grid, whether it means we burn certain essential oils, whether it means we have a gathering in the park and not a formal funeral service. It doesn't matter what it is that we do, it needs to be meaningful for the person who has died and for the people around them. And we need to be talking about this stuff, like I say, way before anyone gets sick. And in fact, I'll tell you what, I gave my father's eulogy at his 80th birthday party. He was alive.
Did he know you were going to do that?
Yeah. I said, it was like an audition. I said to him, now, Dad, I'm gonna give you eulogy for your birthday speech, and if there's stuff you don't like, just let me know and I'll change it. And he said, fine. So I did it. Dad died 18 months later. So when I got up to give the eulogy, I said in my introduction, anyone who was at Dad's 80th birthday party, you think you've heard this, but there are edits. So I will be asking questions afterwards so I'll know who really listened this time and who didn't. So, you know, there's ways of doing it that is meaningful for you. It's just a case of having the conversation first.
I'm really curious. You're so good with death. Do you believe in life after death?
When I was a kid, I believed that you died and, you know, there was this nice old dude with a big white beard who ushered you into heaven and all of that.
Unless under Catholicism, you know, things didn't work
Oh,
out
that
so
was
well.
never going to
Yeah.
happen to me because I'd go to confession first. You
Nice
know,
strategy.
getting it all sorted, yeah. These days, I don't know. You know, I don't know. And do you know what? It doesn't bother me.
Is that therefore an even better reason to get the death right because of that uncertainty?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important to get it right for the people who are left behind, because if someone has a death that is not what they wanted and they're not well cared for, the family live with that forever. And so when the next family member gets sick and looks like they're going to die, the family, it's like post-traumatic stress. The family are all of a sudden transported back to the bad experience they had previously, and they expect this experience now is going to be the same. So it sets a pattern for people's experience of death for the rest of their lives. That's why a so-called good death, which can only be defined by the person who's dying and the people around them, then sets people up for an expectation that everybody's entitled to a good death. And that's, I guess, for me, the guts of it. We are all entitled to a good death, but we don't have ESP, so unless we talk to someone close to us about it, how are we going to expect them to know what we think a good death is?
Molly is an ambassador for Dying to Know Day on Saturday, the 8th of August. It's a great excuse to talk to your loved ones about how to get a good death. Would you please thank Molly Carlisle? Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Charlie.
Thank you.